Good Lord, good Lord, good Lord. Are you talking about a good Lord? Let's talk to this bloke here. He knows all about a very unusual story about one of the great accountants in the Ipswich history. His name is Harold P. Cockadoodle-Doo, and his sister Sophie's listening as well, intently.
Oh, she is.
And there was 5 girls and 1 boy. He was number 4.
Right.
Well, yeah, he would have got spoilt with girls as your sisters.
Yeah, a lot of motherly love.
Now, Harold, tell us a story about this accountant.
Yeah, Danny, look, it's tax time, so, you got to get your tax returns done. So accountants are top of mind. So that's why I wanted to go to the most exciting space in history, and that's about accounting. And, Danny, you're talking about Sophia, but there are a lot of accountants that listen to you as well. And I know they're listening right now. So I should say a big hello to Sam at Dingley, Julie at Kenmore, Tony at Yeronga, Peter at Brassel, and so on. Accountants everywhere tune into you, Danny. It's amazing.
Interfering with the way you do things, you accountants.
Yeah, look. Anyway, let's go back how we did things 90 years ago.
Radio.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, well, the accountants are critical to our world, and they're wonderful people. And so let's go back 89 years ago. It was Friday, the 29th of November, 1935, and "Don't move" was the order given to the accountant and pay clerk at the Whitwood Colliery office at Dinmore. Now, the accountant was Peter Roy McKelvey. Now, he was one of the great accountants in Ipswich history because he did not flinch, even though this wasn't the sort of thing that accountants got trained for. It was payday, and McKelvey had just finished counting the money and filling the pay packets of the miners outside. And the man giving the order to "Don't move" was a masked bandit with a blackened face and was pointing a loaded revolver straight at him. Now, McKelvey, he followed instructions and scooped a number of pay envelopes into the sugar bag that the bandit grabbed, left the office and ran away through the Dinmore scrub outside. But McKelvey, well, he wasn't an accountant to be trifled with. He immediately took the office revolver and, running outside, he could still see the bandit. He was on the north side of the office running towards Brisbane Road. So the accountant raised the office revolver, took careful aim and fired 4 shots. And this is probably the one thing, Danny, that made McKelvey more of a normal accountant, because he missed all 4 and the bandit got away. But now the manhunt was on for a dangerous and armed assailant with stolen cash totalling at £169, 8 shillings and 7 pence. We know that because McKelvey was a good accountant. He kept records. But the thing is, although the bandit was disguised, McKelvey easily saw through the bandit's blackened face and brown sunglasses, because McKelvey recognised the man's voice, build and gait. He identified him as Huey, and his full name was Hugh Chomley Tite, who was a miner at McKelvey's Dinmore Colliery. And McKelvey had known him for 7 years, all 7 years that he's worked there, and had actually handed him his pay packet probably over 300 times.
Wow.
So the great Ipswich detective Nobby Clark, he was called in. Now, Danny, you might remember Nobby. He played a key role in the arrest of Ipswich's tin opener burglar 4 years earlier.
Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, look, on this occasion, Nobby was dispatched to Moggle Ferry, where, after tip-off, he picked up Huey Tite. Now, Tite still had some shoe polish on his face from the robbery. It was across his eyebrows, on his ears and throat. Some had also rubbed off his shirt and hat. Now, Nobby asked Tite, why was his face blackened? And Tite gave I think it's an implausible explanation that he'd been drinking tea from a billy can. Now, that would be quite a vigorous cup of tea that he'd been drinking, wouldn't it?
Burnt tongue.
Yeah, that's right. Anyway, look, with the evidence mounting and the reliable accountant McKelvey as a star witness, it appeared to be an open and shut case. But there was some public sympathy for Tite. You see, his mother had died in 1932. His future father-in-law died in 1934. In 1935, he married his first cousin, Ivy from Silkstone, and 3 months later, he was driven to crime. Now, Tite himself, he was confident that despite all the evidence that he'd get off. And Tite said that, in fact, he thought he'd be sweet because no Ipswich jury would convict him, he said, because he'd lived in Ipswich all his life and worked as a coal miner. And he'd never been in trouble, and he was convinced that the coal miners would stick by him. Anyway, at the Ipswich courthouse on Tuesday the 3rd of March 1936, incredibly, the jury returned with a verdict of not guilty. And it was greeted with tears from the gallery. But you see, the coal miners had got their way and protected their man. Hughie Tite, he remained in his job at Dinmore and was still there 10 years later when he was half buried by coal. The detective, Nobby Clark, of course, he continued into legendary status in the police force. And the accountant, Roy McKelvey, well, as brave as he was, he finished his days quietly as a registered tax agent at Eastern Heights in Ipswich. So we shouldn't forget old Roy McKelvey, the accountant.
The Ipswich is one of the great accountants right here in Ipswich. Now, mate, you've got history out there. You've got so many stories that people would enjoy sitting and reading that aren't rude or crude. They're just good history stories. How do we read this one and others?
Yeah, look, you can find history out there on all the socials, but you can also go online to historyouthere.com. There's over 300 short stories on Ipswich Lane, so there's plenty there for you.
Historyouthere.com. Folks, that is one of the great segments. We get lots of feedback, so keep it tuned. You'll hear Harold on full WK as well. When?
Every Tuesday morning.
Yeah, exactly. But you'll hear him here at about 8:10 each morning on Saturdays on West Bremer Radio. The time now is 8:20.